All right. So, episode 51. So, earlier this week, an old high school friend of mine actually reached out and just completely random out of the blue. I haven't heard from him in years or talked to him in years. So, it was nice to catch up. But after a little text combo, these random ass thoughts from high school just kept popping into my head. And I'd be like working and something would jog my memory, or something at the grocery store, or like even driving and hearing a song or something. So today I'm discussing some of the oddest, most peculiar memories of this impactful time in my life. So to start off, high school was all about that social ladder, man. Everyone was just trying to make their way to the top of this ecosystem. For me, I never really reached the top. As a matter of fact, I never even came close. The majority of my thoughts in high school were, how do I draw the least amount of attention to myself as possible? Now, I wasn't like a loser. I was just one of those kids who managed to blend in really well. I hated high school for the most part, but there were some fun like aspects to it. But one thing I hated though was how public asking someone to a dance was. You'd have to do this whole big deal with like posters and food, or like post-it notes someone's car. You have to get your friends help sometimes, or the girls' friends to help. Like, do people still do this? I feel like kids these days wouldn't do this for some reason, but if so, good riddance, because that shit just sucked. Now, knowing my wife in high school though is like a fun like perk of life. You know, we didn't really know each other until our senior year, but she was always way more popular than I was. Sometimes she'll be on Facebook and she'll say, "Remember so and so from high school?" And I'll have no clue who she's talking about. Gun to my head, I've never heard this name before in my life. And then she'll repeat it and she'll be like, like so and so, they dated blah blah. And I'm just like, "Nope, sorry, never heard of them." And the look on her face, she's almost disgusted, and she'll say, "Did you even go to our high school?" I'm just like, "Yeah, I did. I just kept a low profile, People didn't need to know me. I didn't need to know them." But Little Miss Thing was a partier. Now, I went to a handful of high school parties, but definitely not a lot. I didn't really start drinking until the end of my senior year. That's when I tried weed too for the first time. That was a huge deal. For me, if you smoked weed in high school, I was just like, that guy is going to end up in jail. But then as you get to college and everyone kind of just like accepts it, and I'm sure especially now since it's legal in most states too, but yeah, that was a big deal. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't like this huge like nerd either. I did okay in class, but if the opportunity presented itself and I could cheat, I'd take you up on that offer. I specifically remember 3 big cheating events throughout my high school career. The first was in an algebra class, and I actually knew the material really well, but a friend of mine in the class was struggling. So what do I do? As a nice guy, I helped him out. I shared some of my answers, and then of course he gets caught. And what does the teacher do? He gives my friend the grade that I deserved on the test, which was like, it was like a 96% or something. It was an A. And then he decides to fail me. And then after the class, he was like, "You know what? I'm going to teach you a lesson. You need to stop letting people cheat off you in life." And I was just so like blown away by this. And he said I could retake a different version of the test, but first he'd call my parents and explain what happened. So I just said, fuck it, I'm going to take the F here. They don't need to know. And I ended up with a B in the class. So after all that, it wasn't that bad. But I was like, fuck this, I'm cheating from now on. I'm going to be the cheater. So the second big cheating memory was from classes Spanish 1 and Spanish 2, and you had to take a language, I believe. But if it wasn't for my one Mexican friend in the class, I would have failed miserably. It was always a Scantron test, which was nice. And after every question, he turned his head to the side and then he'd whisper the correct letter. But he always did it in Spanish for some reason, which was really funny. So he'd be like, or be, se, and so at least I learned a few letters in Spanish, I'd say, the first 5. But yeah, that was a good friend looking out there. And then for my third cheating experience, this was in U.S. government. And there was this one big test where you'd have to list out every president in order and then spell their first name and last name out correctly. And for every letter that you got wrong, you'd be docked off a point. So if you added one too many letters like early on in the first name, you were just fucked for that entire name. And this test doesn't sound like too hard, right? It's just a memory thing. And there's only 40 something presidents. But after a few dozen, you're like, I don't know how many R's there are in Barack. And you just start overthinking. So this is what we did. At lunch, we got a plastic water bottle, and then you carefully like rip off the wrapper out of the outside. And then on the inside of the wrapper, it was just white. You'd write down all of the president's name really small in order. And then you just tape it right back onto the water bottle so it looks like brand new. Nothing ever happened to it. And then when the test came around, you simply put the water bottle on the desk and then just like positioned it just right so that you could read it, you know? Passed with flying colors. But anyways, back to the party scene. So I went to a few parties here and there, a few dances, but where the real trouble started was the party buses. If you got invited to a party bus, it was about to get gross. Just a bunch of kids all sweaty and awkward and grinding on each other to Rack City. And there's rarely ever like a destination. Just drive around in a loud, tight, dark space with no parental supervision. I think I went on maybe 2 party buses throughout high school, but I feel like there was always a group of kids who all chipped in. And it seemed like they were going on a fucking bus like at least once a month. But it was just a wild scene whenever you got a chance to go on one. And at the time, you were like, this is the coolest shit on the planet. But just take a second and imagine seeing like a group of 20 10th graders just completely clothed, dry humping each other, strobe lights to songs about hoes, drugs, clubs, and alcohol. And all the guys were just saying YOLO after trying their first shot. Like, what a fucking thought. This was also the period of, like, Jersey Shore. And if you were cool, you were wearing, like, True Religion jeans and had your ears pierced and wore, like, new era snapback hats with that gold sticker still on it so everyone knew that it was, like, new. But to know that you once thought you knew, like, what it meant to be cool, and then you look back and you realize you were the cringe part of that era. Just what a crazy thought. Experiences like party buses, though, really showed you what was actually going on, like behind the scenes in this crazy little world, though. I was typically in honors classes most of my high school career, and I mean, I was surrounded by well-behaved kids. At my school, it was mostly just a bunch of Mormon kids, so there wasn't too much trouble going on. Plus, they were always like dead tired because they had to get up super early for like seminary class, I think it was, before school every morning. So that they were up at like 4 a.m., you know, like they've had a long day. But then sometimes you take an elective that's open to everyone, right? And classes like these also really gave you that much needed life experience. Seeing what real students were like, fights, students screaming profanities at teachers. You know, for me, this was my woodshop class. These kids were like, fuck around and find out. And meanwhile, I'm just sitting there trying to figure out how I'm going to fit my safety goggles over my glasses and decide what type of wood I should use for my upcoming cutting board project. I think I ended up using cherry, by the way, if you're interested. It turned out great. But classes like these really opened up your eyes to the world. And you can also make the same case for the cafeteria. There's always a lot going on in there during lunch. Personally, I always got there early because I usually bought my lunch, and sometimes those lines and crowds around the cart, like the food cart, would just get so fucking crazy that by the time that you got your food, you have like 5 minutes left to eat it. And keep in mind, smartphones weren't super popular yet. Only like the rich ass kids had those. So you just be standing in line next to some anime emo kid with a foxtail hanging out of their back pocket. So needless to say, I wasn't talking to them. And of course, I'm no better because I just came from like gym class and I fucking reek of Axe body spray. But the whole time I'm concerned with getting to the front so that I can order food before what I wanted was sold out. Like, this was a pretty big deal for me. So some common options: the teriyaki chicken bowl served over rice, delicious, just meat and carbs. That's all it was. Option 2, chicken sandwich served with a side of nacho cheese sauce. Again, no vegetable whatsoever, not needed. But sometimes if you got there late, you really only had like sides left, which meant like a warm chocolate chip cookie, a cheese-filled breadstick, a bag of chips, a honey bun, hot fries, corn nuts, and then you wash all of it down with a $1 Arizona iced tea, which was like 50 grams of sugar. Just peak health. Now, I just want to say, though, fuck corn nuts. If you ate corn nuts, I fucking repulsed you. Biggest high school ick, in my opinion. That and like ROTC kids, I think. Those were just the two biggest icks. But the corn nut would just stink up the whole fucking room the next period. And they were so fucking loud too. Like some annoying ass kid chomping away with his mouth open so everyone else can just experience the stench that they were providing. I mean, thankfully though, we also experienced some of the best pop culture moments during this time to like even out all the trauma that we were experiencing. I mentioned Jersey Shore was all the rage during this time, but I also attended high school around these key world-defining moments, I think. So first, Harry Potter and Twilight, the biggest two movie franchises of my teen years. The final Harry Potter movie came out in 2011, and the last Twilight movie came out in 2012. Just grade A teen stuff right there. Team Jacob or Team Edward. You know, high school girls were just... they were evenly divided and willing to fight for their side. Meanwhile, the boys were just jumping on tables doing the Harlem Shake. Or how about like Kony 2012, though? You remember this shit? So I vaguely remember there was some documentary about this warlord, right? That's really all I remember. And you could buy t-shirts and stickers, which cool kids would put on their binders. Side note, do you remember when people used to cover their binders with gum wrappers, like 5 gum? Like, what a crazy ass thing to do. I don't know what drove kids to do this, but a lot of kids were doing this. It was odd. They do little designs. But anyways, I looked up Kony 2012 again, and the film's purpose was to make this Ugandan warlord, Joseph Kony, who founded the Lord's Resistance Army, globally known so as to have him arrested by the end of the year 2012. But I guess as of today, both the United States and Uganda ended the hunt for Kony because it's believed that the LRA is no longer a significant security risk to Uganda. So this guy is just currently, living in hiding somewhere. But what a wild thing for a bunch of kids to make go viral. It's got like over 100 million views on YouTube. I guess this was the beginning of like the rise of YouTube, though. I was never a big YouTube kid. I always would rather have watched TV if possible. Like I remember MTV was channel 37 and VH1 was channel 39. You'd have shows like Catfish, which my wife still loves to this day. She'll binge watch a lot of Catfish shows. And then you have MTV's Golden Boy, Rob Dyrdek. He always had like 6 shows going on. But I was always a closeted Hills fan. To this day, Lauren Conrad is baby girl, man. And when Kristen Cavallari came back, just what a show. What a crazy drama went on in that show. Justin Bobby and Andrina. Justin Bobby was the guy, dude. Outside of MTV, though, that was the time when The Office was on the air, too. And I'm not one of these late Office bandwagoners. I was there every Thursday night just tuning in. I was living it. You know what I was thinking about the other day, though? I was watching one of those Celebrity Architectural Digest videos, and I was like, this is just a modern adult take on MTV Cribs. Just an upscale, classy MTV Cribs where an interior designer comes in and makes your house look good. And, this is me maturing. This is me becoming an adult now. You know what was also a huge craze during this time was 50 Shades of Grey. This book just completely took over and became every woman's fantasy. And being a teenage boy, you're like, what the hell is all the fuss about? A book about crazy sex. And at this time, it sounds intriguing a little bit, the more you know, the better kind of take on this whole scenario. But I can't just be reading this. I will be a laughingstock, So what to do? What do I do? Well, by now, it's senior year. I had my first smartphone, so I downloaded the book on my phone. And whenever, you got a little free time on your hands, I just discreetly swipe through a few pages. And man, what a crazy ass read, especially in public too. You're reading and something crazy is going on. You're looking over your shoulder every 5 minutes just to make sure that no one knows what you're doing. Now, I only read the first book, though, man, because, that's really all I could take. As a 17-year-old boy, I shouldn't have been reading this shit. It's insane how people can read this stuff just so casually. Like this ACOTAR series right now. My wife is in the other room reading about some heartthrob Ryzen, and God only knows like what he's doing to this poor fairy girl. I don't even want to know. But high school was crazy, man. You know, like you just think you've got life all figured out, but at the same time, like you don't know shit. You just got a little bit of freedom and you're just trying to figure it out. I remember I got into an accident in my high school parking lot with a mom one time. That was horrifying. She had these big ass rims and she got this little scratch on her rim and my entire back bumper was just like ripped to fucking shreds. And I got Karen'd before Karen was even a thing. And I was just a kid, you know, so I didn't handle it well. This woman completely just frazzled me. This is one memory I want to forget. But just such an awkward time in life that unfortunately I never will forget it. But random ass flashbacks like these always pop into my head, you know, whenever I smell the wretched scent of a corn nut or anytime I hear the haunting lyrics of Rack City. But maybe that's everyone. If you have any cringe high school memories, I'd love to hear them. I think everyone's experience was so horrible, but also unique in its own way. And if there's one thing I love, it's sharing other people's pain. I find it to just be one of the funniest things in the world. Like I have this one friend who really appreciates good food. And anytime I go out to eat with him, he gets all excited about where we're going to go. He spends a lot of time on what he's going to pick. Like he does a lot of research. And then he gets it, he orders it, he's all excited, and then he gets it back, he tastes it, and he's like, this isn't good, this doesn't taste good. And he's just sitting there miserable and upset. And that is my form of comedy. I love that. So if you have any of that, please send it my way. But that's all I got. I appreciate you listening, and I'll talk to you next week for episode 52, the big 1 year shebang. So see you then.